The Pharmcast is a podcast sponsored by the Maryland Pharmacists Association. I'm your host, Aaliyah Horton. I'm the Executive Director of MPHA. And in my role, I have the opportunity to meet so many fascinating people within Maryland and around the country that are engaged in the practice of pharmacy. They're stakeholders, they're innovators, collaborators, and advocates. And this is my opportunity to bring those conversations and experiences to you. And it's another way that MPHA is fulfilling its mission to strengthen the profession of pharmacy, advocate for pharmacists, and to promote excellence in pharmacy practice. My hope is that at the end of these conversations, you will leave informed, engaged, and connected to pharmacy and our Maryland pharmacy community. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Pharmcast. Today, we are talking with Tyrone Squires, founder and managing director of TransparentRx. He has been in the PBM and managed care and pharmacy industries for more than 15 years. He trains executives, PBM consultants, and employee benefit brokers on how to effectively manage pharmacy benefits. He is also a lead instructor for the Certified Pharmacy Benefits Specialist program. So welcome to the Pharmcast.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting about our conversation is that normally when I do these podcasts, it's people that I've met along my travels as the executive director of MPHA. And so we haven't met before, so this is going to be a great conversation because it's all fresh. But I learned about TransparentRx through Bill Ely at APCI. And I'll tell you the reason why I wanted to talk to you is because in this environment that we have right now, and in the conversations I have as executive director of a pharmacy association working with independent pharmacy owners, PBMs, there's never a conversation where PBMs are put in a good light, where a positive light is shined on them. And so I knew that we needed to connect and learn more. So as I mentioned, well, many in the pharmacy world, community pharmacies in particular, are kind of strained by PBM practices and how they operate within the space. And before we start, I did just want to say one thing, because I think this often gets mixed up, is that when we're talking about PBMs, I do want to say that we are definitely in support of all of our pharmacists who work in PBMs, who are working on formularies and doing the good work that they seek to do. But a lot of the challenges that we see are really at the corporate level. They're high up. And it's more about the structure and that model and not the individuals that work there. So I want to say that, shout out to our members that are in the PBMs. So my first question to you, TransparentRx is like a unicorn within the PBM space. Tell me why.
Well, you touched on it. I come from the retail pharmacy world. Initially, I worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep with Eli Lilly. And then I landed in the corporate offices, and I worked for a short while in market access, getting our branded drugs into the PBM's formulary. My specialty was diabetes care. So the Eli Lilly insulins, the Humalogs and Humulins, and then later on Byada. But I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I loved healthcare. The idea of being able to help people while still being able to make a living. And so I started a mail order pharmacy right after Eli Lilly, licensed nationally in all 50 states. And then I get our first contract, and I'll never forget it, from United Healthcare and the reimbursements. And the reimbursements were lower than our invoice cost. And so I, can't make a living this way. So decided at that point, if you can't beat them, join them. And then I founded in 2014 TransparentRx, the first fiduciary model pharmacy benefit management company with the idea that because we're in the middle, we're going to treat our clients fairly, and we're going to be radically transparent with them. We're going to act in our best interest. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite and reimburse pharmacies, similar to what we were getting reimbursed when I owned the mail order pharmacy, underwater in too many cases, and trying to be fair and reasonable with these, especially independent retail pharmacies, and what we would pay them for the drugs that they dispense as part of our network. And so, to answer your question, I founded it to pick a fight with the big PBMs that I thought were behaving badly.
One of the things when you talked about when you started explaining about the company, you mentioned the fiduciary model. And I'll tell you, over the last couple of years, our independent pharmacies have gone to our state legislature to require that PBMs serve as fiduciaries. And so for those in the audience that are not really understanding what that means, can you explain what that fiduciary model means and why you've leaned into it and why other PBMs are fighting to take that away, to not have that in statute?
Yeah. So, in layman's terms, the fiduciary model means that we're going to act in our client's best interest, even when it doesn't necessarily serve our own best interest. And we're going to act at a level in terms of standard of care that we provide above that trodden by the crowd. And the crowd today, where PBMs are concerned, are hiding cash flows. They're not wanting to share data with their clients. They're retaining rebates from the manufacturer that their clients, third-party payers, health plans are entitled to. And so we're just saying, in our contract, because the relationship between a PBM and its clients, it's not about what the PBM tells the client. It's about what's in the contract. That's how the relationship, the foundation for that relationship is established. And so there's some PBMs that claim that they're fiduciary, but the contract doesn't stipulate that they're fiduciary. And so a true fiduciary model PBM is going to have that ERISA fiduciary language in the contract that says, if you catch our hand in the cookie jar, not only are we not protected contractually, then there's financial penalties associated with that. And without that level of care in the contract, then the PBM is a fiduciary. We provide that to our clients.
Wow. Okay. Now I can see why they were pushing back on that pretty hard.
You look a little surprised about that because it's probably a little bit different than what you've heard or.
Well, I can tell you the PBM lobby in our state, when that comes up, they come out, guns a-blazing to keep that fiduciary language out and not have that requirement in our insurance statute. So, it's just interesting and like a 180 from what I'm used to hearing.
Yeah. So, look, we haven't had a chance to talk, so I want to be careful in what I say because you don't know me yet. But I tend to tell it like it is and how I see it, and based on my experience in this industry over 2 decades. Those PBMs pushing back on that fiduciary standard of care because it goes completely against their business model. It goes completely against their business model and it jeopardizes their revenue. That's why they're pushing back. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. So the other part of this question is, as I mentioned, talking with Bill Ely, and he was speaking very positively about TransparentRx and transparent PBMs. how does that translate on the pharmacy side? So, because typically it's the PBMs are working, they reduce the cost for their clients, or like the pharmacy benefit spend for their clients. But from what we've seen, where that reduction has taken place is in reduced drug acquisition costs, the reimbursement for drug acquisition costs, as well as like little to no dispensing fee. And what we're seeing in our Medicaid space is that I'll go back a little bit. So a couple of years ago, we raised concerns about spread pricing within our Medicaid program, and identified 72 million that the PBMs were keeping in that spread pricing from the state. So we raised that issue. Maryland decided to remove spread pricing from their contracting.
Right.
Where our misstep was not saying use those funds to pay pharmacies. They just stopped doing it. The state saved $72 million. The pharmacies were still in the same place. Now, we just had a study that was completed to show that pharmacies under the Medicaid MCO model are being underpaid about $78 million in terms of reimbursement, as well as low dispensing fee.
Why?
Within the Medicaid MCO space.
Statewide, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's on average for 2 years, 2021 and 2022. And so my question is, like, how does a transparent PBM ensure that the pharmacies are whole and that the pharmacies are getting reimbursed for their drug costs, and that there is an appropriate dispensing fee? So ours was based on the fee for service program, like what that difference would be. And that it was $78 million.
Yeah. And so, so the challenge for PBMs is that the more you reimburse a pharmacy, the higher your client's costs are.
Right.
Right. So that's the challenge. But even still, the pharmacies should be reimbursed enough to make payroll, to cover the mortgage, to cover the rent, pay for insurance, pay for utilities, and for the owner or owners to be able to make a decent living, provide for their families based upon all the knowledge that they've obtained in education.
Hear, hear.
Right. And so I think we're moving in a direction where the PBMs are going to reimburse for the cost of the drugs and then pay a flat fee to the pharmacies above the cost of those drugs. And so that cost of dispensing, right? So it incorporates all of those expenses that I talked about, and then a fair or reasonable margin in there in terms of profit for the owners. And so I think we're moving in that direction. PBMs pay for the drugs, the cost of those drugs, and it's probably going to be NADAC or some form of NADAC. And then, anywhere from, $11 to maybe $15 or so on top of that for the pharmacies to be able to thrive and then grow. So we're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction. And I can tell you, when I first started this business, we deal with a lot of brokers and benefits consultants. They really weren't concerned about what pharmacies were being reimbursed. They weren't concerned about DIR fees. Right? Even if it was a way for the PBMs to generate additional revenues for themselves, to lower the cost of goods, right? That the plan sponsor is actually entitled at a very minimum to know about.
Right.
right? But that is starting to change now. I've never heard as much conversation around fair reimbursement to pharmacies, especially independent pharmacies, in my entire 20-year career that I'm hearing today. So we're not there yet, but I think we're getting there.
That is great to hear, because that's one of the, just this past session, and actually we've done it a couple of years, we had legislation where we wanted the Medicaid MCOs to reimburse at NADAC plus the fee for service dispensing fee that was done out of, a study that's done every couple of years. And that was around $10.67. So that's great to hear, because right now, folks are getting like 40 cents, it's averaging about 47.50 cents per for the dispensing fee. So, which is crazy. And, we talk about it a lot, and I think there's been more and more momentum because the pharmacies are so strained right now. And it's now also leaked in, and mostly it was the independent pharmacies. And, the independent pharmacy voice sometimes can't compete with the larger corporate ones, right? But now what we're seeing is that those same challenges are hitting the chain pharmacies. And,
Yes.
While they're able to rely a lot on the front of the store spend, it's even becoming challenging for them now. And so I think that's why we're hearing more about it, and we're hoping to get change. I mean, we've got all the data out there to explain it. But I will say, this last legislative session, when this report was given to our General Assembly, they were shocked. And the hard part about their shock was that we've been saying this for like the last 10 years, but it was finally on paper from the Department of Health, from the Insurance Administration on paper. So they can't deny that it's 50 cents. And they were like, well, so you're saying that it's less than minimum wage? Yeah, that's what you guys are doing for doctorates,
Right.
So I appreciate that perspective, that you're looking towards moving in that direction. And so one of the statements that you made is a good segue into the next question that I had. It was that when you were talking to these different pharmacy benefit kind of brokers and those folks, is that as I was doing my research, I saw the Pharmacy Benefits Institute of America, where you're certifying, is it PBMs or individuals, or can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the pharmacy
Uh-oh.
benefit in America, and so let me just back up. One, when I started the business, a big gap that I was able to identify right away was a lack of education around the pharmacy benefits management industry, the business of pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just decided that that was going to be our focus. And so if we educate the decision makers within the organizations about ways to improve their pharmacy benefit, it would help them improve the relationship with their PBMs. And also, it coincides with our fiduciary business model. Mom would always, tell me, when you know better, you do better.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started the Pharmacy Benefit Institute of America, and under that, we have the first certified pharmacy benefit specialist that is backed by a major university, the University of North Carolina Eshelman School of Pharmacy, backs that program for us. And to answer your question, it's designed for HR, finance, employee benefit brokers, consultants, as well as pharmacists who either want to break into the PBM industry or are already working in managed care and want to provide themselves with an opportunity for growth and promotions. And so with that, there's continuing education offered through ACPE, for pharmacists, depending on the classroom setup that they choose, whether it's in person in our annual summit that we're doing in July, 20 continuing education credits when it's in person, or depending on the state, 8 to 10 if they do it virtually over the course of 8 weeks.
Okay.
So it's really the first of its kind program, and I don't hold anything back. I bust open the black box, and I share what I know about the industry, having worked in it for 2 decades.
That's interesting. And I did see that that there's a kind of an ethical kind of code of conduct that's a part
Yes.
of the certification. And the ethics statement highlights 4 key areas: transparency, conflict of interest, best practices, member advocacy, and confidentiality. And can you sort of talk about why it was important to put those principles kind of front and center? I think
And
you did
so,
cover it, but
yeah, and so when we developed the code of ethics, the idea was, and I touched on it earlier, about behaving at a level, beyond that trodden by the crowd, right? And so it was written to give people in the industry, specifically buyers, comfort that there are PBMs, and there are opportunities for people to just do the right thing, even when no one's looking. And so that was the idea behind it. You give us assets, and we're going to protect those assets as if they were our own, and doing right by our clients. So that was the idea behind it. Because when you talk to people, there's so much cynicism and skepticism around the pharmacy benefits management industry. And I don't want it to be that way, right? Maybe we make a little bit less money in exchange for being viewed in a positive light. That's the goal behind the code of ethics. And we've got a lot of work to do. So with opportunities like this, we can get the word out.
yeah, I love that. And I think it's really important because, if you just look at PBMs straight on for what they're saying, we work for the clients, we're doing what our clients want to say, is that some of the business practices are putting pharmacies out of business. And so if your goal is to have the best kind of pharmacy benefit management, if there are no pharmacies there, you're not going to be able to serve the communities that need to be served. The networks are not, for the clients, the networks are not going to be adequate. And so it is kind of this, it's a relationship that needs to be mutually beneficial for the system to work. And, unfortunately, pharmacists and the patients are at the very end of the whole pipeline. And so that's always a challenge. But I think that what you're saying is really important to support patients and their ability to access care.
Yeah, and so, and I'll just say this, we'll probably be wrapping up here, but I just, some of the PBMs, let's just call it what it is. They are either trying to put independent pharmacists out of business, or they're indifferent to their actions and how they impact independent pharmacists. And that's not right. I read an op-ed a few months ago by Representative Erica Leon out of New Hampshire. And she worked as an analyst, investment analyst on Wall Street about 2 decades ago. And she was given an opportunity to analyze kind of a novel industry. And the reason she was going to do research was there was a lot of pension money that was potentially on the table, institutional money on the table to be invested in this industry. Upon her research, the conclusion of it, and that op-ed is out in the public domain, but she decided she wasn't going to participate on this team. She was invited to be on the team. She declined to be on the team. And in her words, the reasons were there was going to be a lot of money made at the expense of patients.
Mm.
Now, and so she's a politician, and I'm thinking she's just telling us what she wants to hear, and yada, yada, yada. And then I go to her LinkedIn profile, and I see that she graduated from MIT. And I said, she's smart enough to have seen this coming 2 decades ago.
Mm.
The reason I say what I'm saying is that some PBMs never intended to save people money. It was all about making money for themselves.
Mm.
And if that is the case, it's harmful to their clients, it's harmful to patients, and it's harmful to their competitors. And in some cases, those competitors are independent pharmacies.
Mm-hmm.
And so this thing is bigger than I even realized. When I initially started the PBM 10 years ago, I just thought PBM stumbled on a way to make their shareholders happy. They just stumbled on the fact that their clients weren't as sophisticated as they were, and they could take advantage of that financially.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, it was always the intention to make as much money as they can throughout the process, and it wasn't about putting clients first. And so I want to fix that.
That's fantastic. And you know what? We will transition at this point because I think that's a great closeout for this conversation. Another thing that we do as part of the podcast is that we always want to make sure that our people are doing well. And so I always ask what our guests do for self-care. I know it's like a big transition, but I think it's important. So I ask about what you do for self-care to make sure that you're good, that you're excelling within your professional life as well as your personal life. So how do you find that balance to keep going and do what you do?
Well, this is not going to be a popular answer. Everyone, I think, is born with at least one gift. Some people are born geniuses, some people are born beautiful, some people are born athletic like LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
I was born with ambition.
Okay.
That's my gift. And so no matter what obstacles are in front of me, challenges, I thrive on that. That's what keeps me going. And, stress and all that, that's not something for, me personally where it's been an issue. But the idea of making positive change, making things better, that's what keeps me going, and my employees and their families, and that they can do well. So I would just say, whatever it is for you that you've identified, if you haven't identified what your strength is,
Mm-hmm.
and then leverage it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sacrifice that strength. Leverage it. That's what I'll leave with.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I asked that question because I think all the responses I've got from our guests, they've varied so widely, but I think it's an opportunity for the listeners to kind of reflect on where they are, what they're doing, what they may need to change, they may not, or try something new. We don't know.
Yeah.
So with that, I will say thank you. I think this has been a really enlightening conversation. I'm really glad to have it, to shed some light on the work that you're doing and to offer a different perspective on PBMs. And I think for many of our listeners, they're working across the country on PBM reform and and all kinds of work within this space. And this is an opportunity for them to take these tidbits that you've shared and share it with legislators and share it with others to say that it is possible. We don't need to believe in the impossibility of change. So again,
Yeah, yes.
thank you.
Say no to the bad actors. And there are some good actors out there. Don't be afraid of them. Give them a shot. Say no to the bad actors. And then we'll be all right.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and rate the podcast on all major podcast platforms. We look forward to dropping more great conversations, and of course, sponsorship opportunities are available. Just contact us at MPHA. Thanks.